I've been a cop for 10 years. It's the family trade, you might say. But nothing in my decade on the force, or in my father's or grandfather's stories prepared me for this, the case that still haunts me. It started like any other. A call about a domestic disturbance in a quiet suburb. When we got to the house, the front door was ajar. There was no sign of a struggle, no noise, but the silence itself was eerie, weighing heavy on our senses. As we ascended the staircase, a putrid stench clung to the air. It was the smell of decay, a smell that gets under your skin, a smell you never forget. The horror awaited us in the master bedroom. The scene was a grotesque tableau. Bodies, or what remained of them, were scattered around the room. Flesh was flayed and bones gnawed clean. Blood was spattered across the walls, the ceiling, staining everything in a grim hue. And in the middle of it all, sat a small, nondescript box. My partner, hardened veteran that he was, bolted from the room, retching. I was frozen in place, a visceral terror clutching me. But duty overcame fear. I moved closer to the box, a grim curiosity driving me. The box was made of a dark, heavy wood, etched with symbols I didn't recognize. As I reached out to open it, a sharp, hot pain sliced through my hand. I recoiled, blood seeping from a deep cut that hadn't been there a moment before. The world seemed to tilt and spin, and a guttural laughter echoed in my ears. I staggered back, my blood dripping onto the box. It absorbed the blood, the etchings glowing with a baleful light. I stumbled out of the room, fleeing the accursed house. In the days that followed, the nightmare didn't end. Each night, I dreamt of the box. Each day, I woke up to find a new cut on my body. I saw fear in my partner's eyes, and before a week was up, he quit the force. I was spiraling down, my world closing in. Desperate, I went back to the house, the box drawing me in like a moth to flame. But the house was empty. The bodies were gone, the blood was gone. And so was the box. The case went cold, the events explained away as a result of hallucinogenic drugs at the crime scene. But I knew the truth. And I was reminded of it every time I looked at my hands, at the cuts that never seemed to heal. The horror didn't lurk in the shadows anymore. It was here, in the light of day, in my reality. I was a part of the macabre story that started that disturbing night. A story that was far from over, as every night, in my dreams, the box awaited. The end. 2. I'm a beat cop in a small town, not the type of place where the unimaginable happens. But one night changed everything. The dispatcher's voice over the radio informed me of a break-in at the old Henderson place, a house that had been abandoned for years. Armed with my flashlight and service weapon, I approached the creaking Gothic mansion. Pushing open the heavy door, I was greeted by a cold gust of wind that sent a shiver down my spine. The air inside was stale, tasting of old decay and forgotten stories. As I walked through the echoing rooms, I could feel a sinister presence. It was in the way the dust particles swirled in the flashlight's beam, in the low murmur that seemed to breathe through the walls. In the basement, I found the source of the disturbance. Chains, hooks, and implements that looked disturbingly like medieval torture devices hung from the ceiling. Bloodstains, old and new, marked the floor. The room was a chilling testament to the sadistic horrors that had occurred there. Before I could call it in, something slammed into me from behind, knocking me to the cold, bloody floor. A figure towered over me, his face hidden beneath a leather mask. He held a gleaming meat hook in one hand. I fought back, the adrenaline fueling my blows. We grappled, our struggle a dance of life and death. I managed to land a solid hit, and he staggered back. Taking my chance, I fired. The bullet hit its mark, and the masked figure collapsed. When backup arrived, they found me in the basement, the body of the intruder next to me. But the real horror was revealed when the mask was removed. The face underneath was a mirror of my own. The intruder was my identical twin brother, who I believed had died at birth. The secret of the old Henderson place, the sadistic horrors that had occurred within its walls, had been the monstrous work of my own flesh and blood. From that night, I was no longer just a cop. I was the keeper of a dark family secret, a brother to a sadistic ghost. Every call, every dark corner, reminded me of the horror within my own blood, a chilling narrative I was doomed to retell. The end. 3. Being a rookie officer in a quiet seaside town, I'd anticipated peaceful patrols and minor disturbances. That was until the night I received a distress call from the lighthouse on the edge of town. The place was deserted, not having an operator since automation. Who, then, was calling for help? I sped through the swirling fog, the beam from the lighthouse casting long shadows on the road. As I climbed up the narrow stairs of the lighthouse, the distress call echoed through the iron walls, the voice pleading, then screaming. Reaching the top, I found the control room in chaos. The communication system was destroyed, yet the distress call was still audible. More disturbingly, I saw bloody handprints smeared across the walls, leading up to the lighthouse's lens. I moved towards the lens apprehensively, and what I saw will haunt me till my last breath. Reflected in the gigantic Fresnel lens was an image not of the sea and the rocky coast, but a disturbing scene from the past. A man, the last lighthouse keeper, was being brutally assaulted by shadowy figures. Before I could react, a cold hand grabbed me, turning me around. Standing before me were the shadowy figures from the reflection, no longer confined within the lens. The reality of the spectral assault I had just witnessed sent shivers down my spine. I fought back, using my baton, my training, my sheer will to survive. Strangely, each blow seemed to dissolve the figures, their forms flickering like a faulty projection. And then, in a final act of desperation, I smashed the Fresnel lens. The effect was instantaneous. The figures disintegrated, their unearthly screams filling the lighthouse before fading away. I was alone in the room, the silence deafening after the chaos. As I reported back to the station, a chilling realization washed over me. The distress call was still looping. Only now, the voice screaming for help amidst static was disturbingly familiar. It was my own. From that night, I carried a terrible burden, knowing that my spectral assault was forever etched in time, playing over and over. I was a victim, a ghost of the present stuck in the past, a shocking twist in the tranquil town's forgotten lore. The end.